Yeah, first,
Yeah.
I read the course catalog and I thought that I will be able to complete the redux so that I will be able to complete my assignments easily. So the
Mhm.
first thing I felt this course is that it will make you good at React. So it will teach
Mhm.
us testing along with that also optimization, which will be further useful for us. And also, if I talk about the toughness, if the students are good at RCT 101, so they will
Mhm.
be able to complete. Yeah, there is no permission for me to on my
Uh,
video.
that the case. Yeah, not programmers. Um, can you try now?
Yeah, now I am able to.
Yeah.
Yeah, now it is showing video has stopped. You cannot start your video.
Range. Yeah. No one. Oh,
Now I am able
yes.
to see.
Yeah.
So after reading the course catalog, I felt that it will be so hard for me to complete this course. So
Mhm.
in that course catalog, I found that Redux testing and optimization. After seeing the testing, I felt that it will be so hard. So after
Okay.
completion of a single assignment, I felt somewhat
Mhm.
confident that I will be able to complete this course because
Okay.
I think optimization and testing is a bit
Mhm.
hard before the before the assignment section. So I felt
Okay.
about so much nervous. And after
Mhm.
seeing the lecture and after completing of the Redux assignment, I felt somewhat comfortable. At the starting, I felt it is so hard, but after referring to the official documentation and after doing some research in the official documentation, I felt it is somewhat medium kind of hardness.
So,
So
like, if I have to compare the hardness between RCT 101 and 211, like, how steep do you think that hardness is in terms of learning?
I think it is hard. So I think it is 2x hard when we
Okay.
compare it with the RCT 101. But yeah, if you refer official documentation while solving the
Mhm.
assignment, it will be so much easy for you to solve the assignments.
Got it. Yeah. So, like, how did you manage your time? Like, what were your activities before the class and after the class? Like,
So in
especially
the
regarding assignments, if possible.
in the morning, I used to watch the pre-class video.
Mhm.
So in the lecture time, sir used to give us some time so that we can code along with the sir. So which so I used to utilize that time and I used to code and I used to prepare the notes after that. After the completion of the lecture, I used to prepare notes. So after that, I complete the assignments by referring the official documentation. So I
Mhm.
will dedicate daily 3 hours for this React and
Mhm.
also 2.5 hours for the DSA.
Sure. So, like, what do you think? Like, if I talk about yourself, like, what do you think? Like, are you very good in DSO or are you good in coding?
Yeah, I mainly concentrate on coding itself.
So,
So
like,
I think
your
I'm not.
DSA is good.
No,
Do you think?
my DSA is not good because I am
Yeah.
only dedicating 2.5 hours, which is not sufficient for the DSA.
Mm, okay. So, like, let's say this is a new course, right? You are going to learn new topics, and one of the queries that students have that, okay, I do get too many errors, right? I face many issues while coding things, right? Because it's as a like, you can assume that yes, since you are learning new topics, you will face some issues, right? You will face issues in no getting the output. You'll face issues in console errors and many more, much more, right? So how did you approach those problems? Like, what was your approach in solving them? Did you wait for the
So
stand-ups? Like, what was it?
so as I said, while solving assignment, I used to refer the official documentation.
Hmm.
So mainly I don't get much errors. So if I get errors, I used to search in the Google. So
Okay.
again, if I get errors, so I will start a discussion in the assignment section so that I will be able to solve my queries easily. So I usually not attend much IA stand-ups because that particular slot will be to make for me is to make notes and solve the assignments.
Hmm. Got it.
So if I face any issues, the during the discussion section, I will be able to solve all the queries.
Hmm. Makes sense. Yeah. Anyone? Do you have any other questions for Narendra here? Like any other questions that you think that we might have missed and that you want to ask him? No, this is a very good time to ask questions. Are you good at last block? I think he is, just because like he's definitely good. That's why he is here. So that question is out of the topic. How much he scored in all the evaluations? I'm not sure if we are supposed to talk about the scores, but which topic should we focus more on? What do you think? Which topic should we focus more on,
Yeah,
Naren?
as far as React 101 is, so I will say there is no such thing because you have to focus on everything because in the rct211 Redux is also important to manage the state and also optimization and also testing. So I think everything is important, but
Hmm.
if I say if I arrange them, so first you need to good at Redux, then optimization, then TypeScript, and then testing. So
Hmm. Yeah. Strategy, if any. I'm not sure what strategy are you looking for. Is it related to time optimization or it's like learning things? Okay. No worries. We'll proceed with the. Was it hard to shift from J6 to TS? What do you think? Like,
yeah,
do
it
you
will be
find
so much
TypeScript
hard.
too hard?
Yeah, you need to practice a lot TypeScript.
So, not to again take this in a constructive feedback manner, that okay, it is going to be hard, but it's going to be like
Yeah, if you
uh,
practice, then it
uh,
will be not so much hard.
yeah, yes, this is one good question. Like, do you feel that you need to rewatch the recording again and again after the class?
So as I said, the sir is going to give us some time to code along himself.
Mhm.
So during that, I used to prepare my notes so I don't have to watch the lecture again.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That will be all, I think. I don't see any other questions coming up. So yeah, thanks, Narendra. Thanks for joining and thanks for clarifying all the questions.
Yeah,
I'll
thank you, sir.
progress with you. Yeah. Okay. So just to no go through the course catalog for this batch, I'll just uh, okay. So just to give you a basic understanding of like what are you going to no learn in this course or in this module. So it is expected that you already know about React. You have good understanding of JavaScript and also about React outer DOM and such. So if I just go into specifics of what are the topics that you need to understand, well, if I show you the list, it's going to be very big. But just to give an idea, everything that you have learned till now is going to be used in in our classes, in building projects, in during our assignments, at every small and every step. All of the things that you have learned till now, straight from your JS classes to RCT 101, that will be used directly or indirectly during the classes. So if you have any doubts in any of these topics, please ensure that you get it clarified before the class through your IES as or through your instructors as well, right? Just ensure that you get it clarified, because if you miss out on this basic topics, building or no building the foundation on a um, on these topics which you are not very good at will not be very beneficial to you. So I highly encourage that, okay, if you feel that okay, these are the topics that I'm not very good at, please ensure that you no go through those topics again, because we have like today and tomorrow to no recap some of the topics that may need some no attention as well. So coming to JS, everything from arrow functions, thread operator, default params, mutable and immutable data types. You should know how to work with no APIs. So get, post, put, patch, closures, promises, async, await. You should know about no higher order function, how to work with JSON server. You should have fairly good amount of knowledge on like what is JSX, what is functional component, what are the different hooks that we are using, what is context API, what is state management, and all of those things. So like some of the basic tricks, tips and tricks that we do share with every student before the start of this course curriculum is that please ensure that you are watching the pre-class videos and you read the notes, because the pre-class videos and the notes that is being shared with you before the class is going to be very necessary to understand what is going to be covered in the live class. If you miss out on those, there is a high amount of chance that you don't know what is going to be covered in the live class, and consecutively you will miss out on asking the questions. Yes, there was no pre-class videos for today or tomorrow, but from day 3 you will get that pre-class video. But ensure that whenever there is a pre-class no schedule, please go through the videos and through the notes, because that will help you in understanding that okay, these are the topics that we are going to cover in the live class. So even though you don't understand uh, what is being taught in the pre-class, you will have some amount of knowledge or some amount of idea that okay, these are the things that we are going to cover in the live class, and these are the topic or these are the questions that I may ask for clarification in the live class, right? So please ensure that you go through the videos and notes if possible, and better yet, prepare your own notes, because the notes that we provide, it's basically because we are providing you the notes. It's good. It's updated. It's to the mark. But at the end of the day, this notes is something that if you try to memorize, you'll not be able to capture it 100%. Why? Because these are the notes that is written by someone else. So an effective way of learning is to create your own notes in your own language, in your own understanding, right? So if I teach you promises, well, this is okay. I can give you a definition, I can give you an example, but there is a high amount of chance that you may forget that. But if you try to create a note that is no written in your own language that you understand, in your own example that you know can explain to other, it will be much more beneficial. So just reading the notes is not enough. Try to create your own note or your own version of those notes if possible at each and every place. Uh, the question is like ask why, what, and how to every topic that you are learning. I see this herd mentality in like many students that they don't ask questions, they don't ask the correct questions at correct places. Why? Because they think that okay, the whole class is understood, no one is asking question, I'll not ask the question as well. So don't go inside that herd mentality that okay, no one is asking question, I'll not ask the question, or what will my friends think that I don't know this basic topic as well. So that should not be the case. You should not fall into that trap that okay, what will my friends think, or no, where is everyone else going? You are here to learn, right? And the most effective way of learning things is by understanding that what are the things that you know and what are the things that you don't know. So try to ask that, okay, why are we learning this? What is the reason of learning this, and how do we actually execute this? So let's say if you start with Redux, right, one of the main topics in this course curriculum, and so the very first thing that you should ask that, okay, why are we learning Redux? And then the second question could be that, okay, what is Redux? And the third question could be, okay, how should I use Redux? Because if you ask this three questions to any topic that you have learned till now, or the topics that you're going to learn in the future, that will clarify everything. That will that will clear every doubt that you have, or that you are going to possibly learn in the future as well. Don't fall into the trap of tutorial hell again. As mentioned, please ensure that you are not no going through the lecture recordings uh, like from the starting to the beginning. If you have any problem, just watch that specific part of that recording. Okay, that will be more than enough. But if you no think about that, okay, after the class I'll rewatch all the lecture again. It's not effective, and it's going to be very time consuming. So either get the help or the clarification from your IES, from an instructor, from the discussion thread, or just search for that part from the recording itself. Why tutorials are not to be avoided? I'm talking about tutorial help. So going through a video once, it's okay. Going through a video twice is okay. But some people have the tendency of rewatching the videos again and again, and not just specific part of the videos, but the whole video, right? The whole 2-3 hour video again and again. That's time consuming, right? And you don't get any work done on that. So that is something that you need to be avoiding. So be proactive in that term, that okay, ask for help, that okay, I'm getting this error. I Google it. I don't get any resolution. I ask for help from my IES or my instructor. Okay. So that is a effective way of learning things, or learning any new topic for that matter. Complete the assignments. Ideally, it is expected that you complete the assignment of that day itself, but there will be some assignments which may take a bit longer amount of time to complete. So in that case, it is expected that you complete it by the week. So if you have got any assignments in this week, ensure that you complete it by Sunday midnight. Because if you don't do it, then two things are going to happen. First, you are not going to understand the topics that is going to be covered in the second week. And second, you will not be confident on the evaluation, because the evaluation is nothing but the topic that is covered in that particular week. So if you have completed the assignments on time, so it will give you a head start on the second week, and conversely, it will also give you a confidence that okay, I've completed everything. I know all the topics that I was taught. I've completed the assignments, and that will give you a boost during the evaluations as well. So that is something that we expect, that okay, you complete the assignments as quick as possible for that week. Yes. So read the edits, understand the info given. Again, so the point that we want to highlight here is that many students don't have this tendency to read things, right? They try to avoid reading notes. They try to avoid reading documentation. They avoid reading edits. If it's a video, if it's audio, if it is interactive in that sense, people are willing to listen to it. People are willing to watch it. But as soon as text comes into the picture, people generally avoid it. So you miss out on reading the edits, you miss out on reading documentation, you miss out on reading any information that is given to you. So that should not be the case, because in this module, you are going to get lots of errors, right? And this whole module is basically built on the no foundation that okay, you are going to read things. You are not going to uh, look at videos. You are not going to look at no listen to audio as much as reading things is concerned. So whenever you get any errors, whenever you miss out on some things, try to Google it. If not, if you get the answers through some articles, well and good. If not, then please ensure that you are asking your IES or your instructor for proper clarification as quick as possible. Debugging is going to be a major part of software development too. Yes. So just a general query. If I take a day of a software developer, how or what percentage of you think that okay goes into debugging? So if I consider the whole work day of a software developer to be 100%, what percentage of it do you think goes into debugging the code? Yes. So it's close to 60, 65, 70%, right? So you may think that okay, a software developer is someone who writes code all the day, writes or he is already always typing on the keyboard, but that's not the case. Majority of the time, in most of the companies, most of the software developers, they spend their time on reading things. They spend their time on reading the errors. They try on resolving the errors that are coming. So they spend their time on debugging. So that is the reason it is expected that in this module, if you get errors, try to read that error, see if you can get the resolution for that error, and try to debug that issue. It's not going to be spoon fed to you that, okay, this is the error, this is the resolution. No. There will be cases where you get the errors, you have to read it, and you have to understand and you have to debug that, okay, this is the place where my code is breaking. What can be the issue around it? Okay, some don'ts. Don't attend the live class while laying on bed or through the mobile phone, spamming the chat box with the same doubted statement repeatedly, asking doubt on see when A or being is discussed. So let's say if I'm no, talking about a particular topic. So try to ask doubts related to that topic or on that topic itself, but don't ask a doubt on a topic which is not related anywhere to the current topic that is being discussed. What it does is it breaks the flow, not just for you, for me, but all these students who are in the call. So if I'm no, let's say if I'm teaching a topic around Redux, it's expected that you ask questions around Redux or topics which may be related to Redux or the concept to Redux. But asking a doubt which is not related to Redux on a very, even very far, right? So that should be avoided as much as possible. Be proactive, right? So there will be places when I ask for feedback, when I ask for, okay, what do you think could be the output, what could be the answer for this? So in that places I assume that, okay, you should be proactive enough to actually type things out or no speak if possible. If I give you the option to speak, please ensure that you are being proactive in that sense. So that's all that you need to keep in mind. But apart from this thing, if you want to summarize everything that we just talked about in these 2 slides, you can take with these 3 things. Okay, be attentive. Okay, so you just need to be attentive for 2.5 hours for 17 days. That's the duration of this module. So if you are attentive for like 2.5 hours per day, I think the coding curriculum is like you will complete about 60 to 70% of the coding curriculum by itself. Be honest to yourself, though. So this point mentions that, okay, uh, many times we try to give statements to ourselves that, okay, I've understood this thing, but deep down you know that, okay, I don't know this thing, right? So uh, you can be dishonest to other people, right? You can say that, okay, I know this thing, I don't know this thing. It's totally up to you, but at the end of the day, please ensure that you are honest to yourself. Tell yourself that, okay, these are the things that I know for 100%, these are the things I don't know for 100%. Because if you're not honest to yourself, if you don't know what are the topics that you're missing on, you will never be able to learn things, right? So that's the second part. And the third point is, again, be a proactive communicator. So whether it be your live classes, whether it be your daily stand-ups, or any task related during the course curriculum, please ensure that you are reaching out to people as quick as possible. Because the more you delay on things, the more it's difficult for you and as well as for us to rectify those changes. So some of the topics that we'll be covering is today's and tomorrow's topic is mostly on some of the recaps that we have already covered in RCT 101. So we'll look at some topics around React itself today and tomorrow. Then on, we'll move on to custom hooks, generic components. Then we'll move on to Redux. We'll talk about what Redux is, why are we using Redux, what is the problem statement that it is solving, and how to work with Redux as well. Then we'll try to build a front-end application, a CRUD application, using React and Redux. And at the end, we'll also look at performance optimization. How do you optimize your application in the highest way possible? And then at the last, we'll also look at TypeScript and testing as well. So you can expect to create a fully fledged front-end application by the end of this course curriculum. And this course will be the end for your front-end learning as well. So after this, it is expected to start learning about backend curriculum. So this course will end as the last piece for your front end knowledge. So anything that you are missing out on, or anything that you feel that, okay, these are the things that I don't know, should be clarified in this module itself. Okay, any questions from anyone? In React, what do we have to prefer, Fetch or Axios? So we'll try to work with Axios as much as possible, but again, Fetch or Axios basically the same things. They both work in promises, but the syntax of Axios is something that we'll look heavily on in this model. Just to clarify, today's and tomorrow's notes should be written properly, or our City 101 notes are enough, and we are supposed to just go through this session. So when I talk about notes, right? When I talk about notes, what I mean is that, okay, let's say you are attending a class, right? Okay, and I teach you some topic. Let's say you have understood the topics. How do you write those learnings in your own way, in your own notes, right? That is what I'm talking about. I'll we will provide you the notes, definitely. We'll provide you everything that we are covering in the live class. So all the presentation, all the documentation, all the third-party notes, everything we'll provide you. But at the end of the day, you should also have your own notes to to go back to and to understand, okay, this is what I understood from the class. This is what I did not understand from the class. This is what I need to ask. This is what I need to clarify. In course catalog, there were mention of Next.js. No, we are not going to cover Next.js in the regular course curriculum. We may include it as a part of external learnings when you go to the placement module as such, but that will not be the that Next.js will not be a part of the RCT 211 course curriculum as of now. Use state or use reducer, did not get you. When will Aditya sir join class for teaching? I hope by Thursday or Friday. Friday is a holiday or so. Maybe Thursday or Saturday. Okay, so I hope there are no more queries around this or around the course curriculum. No, I'm not an external instructor. I am an internal instructor, but I've moved to different roles inside the company. He's asking what should we prefer, use state or use reducer? So we'll cover this part tomorrow. We'll talk about state management solely on tomorrow's class. So you will get an understanding that, okay, what are the cases when we should use state, or what are the places where we should prefer use reducer, because at the end of the day, they are both state management tools, right? You use both the hooks to manage the state. But when should we use them is something that we'll look in tomorrow's class. Yes, Akhilesh, yes, Deepak. Okay, let's continue with the normal class flow then. Second, let's resume the screen share. I hope this screen is visible on VS Code. Yes, so Aditya is going to be your instructor for RCT 211 since he's facing some internet issues in his hometown. I'll be taking the first few classes for you, but Aditya is going to take over eventually. Can we use notes for evaluation, which is prepared for by me? So during evaluation, are you asking about should we use notes during evaluation? No, that's not expected. That will be a case of plagiarism. So during evaluation, you are not expected to refer to your own notes or the code that you have written during the live classes as well. You can only refer to the official documentation if needed. Okay, so let's continue. So what are we going to look today? Let me start the application real quick. Start. Again, so the things that we are going to cover today, it's nothing new. You already know about these topics in RCT 101. So we'll not start with a new topic, but we'll try to revise some of the topics that is already taught to you. So in this class today, we are primarily going to look at two things, use effect and routing. So these are the two topics that we are going to focus on in this class. And we'll try to understand what are the different ways of using use effect, what are the what are the pitfalls that you need to understand about when you are working with the use effect as such. Should I keep my video on? I'm not sure if that's the case. If any one of you are facing any bandwidth issues, do let me know. Okay, so let's come here. Okay, so before we start with use effect, can someone tell me what is side effect? Or where have you heard this word side effect? Changing in state or UI? Effects which does not have predictable outcomes. Interaction with outer environment. When we manipulate, okay, so let me rephrase the question. Where have you heard the word side effect outside programming? Yes, medicines, right? So why do we use the term side effects in relation to medicines? Because when we use or when we take medicines, right, we expect that okay, this medicine should show this output, right, or it should give this output. But if you don't get that output, we say that okay, that was a side effect of that medicine. It the result that we got from taking that medicine is not the one that we were expecting or the one that we wanted. So that was a side effect. That was an unexpected change. Yes, that was something other than the desired output. So what is actually use effect in React? Well, it's a hook that is meant to handle side effects in React. So, so side effects can be termed with terms like unpredictable, unsure, etc. Or impure functions, right? If you try to think of side effects, you may also try to relate with it with impure functions. How many of you know what impure functions are? Again, we'll cover what impure functions are in the upcoming classes in some of the lectures, but a basic idea of what impure functions are. Pure functions gives same output. Impure function can give different results, right? So yes, so in impure functions, we are not sure about what the output is, right? So impure function can be correlated with side effects as well. So now the question is, okay, what are impure functions or what are the side effects in React? So some of the side effects or the examples for side effects would be things like calling an API, setting up a subscription, updating the DOM elements manually, working with set timeout or set interval, using console logs, setting or getting data from local storage, etc. Now the question is, why do you think all these examples are side effects in React? So I said that, okay, these are examples of side effect, but why? Why do you think calling an API is a side effect? So let's go to each and every part one by one. Why do you think calling an API is a side effect? Async, it comes from outside world, outside the scope of React. Yes. Yeah. So understanding what is side effect, you first need to be clear about like what is React in itself, right? So what do we know about React? React is a library, right? React is a library. And what is the task of React as a library? To create UIs, right? To create views for our application, right? So that is the only task of React, is to create views or to create UIs. That's the only task of React. There is nothing else to it. React does not come with routing. React does not come with global state management. React does not come with any other things. Like, so the primary focus of React is to no create UIs or to create views. So anything that is not related to React or what React wants to do is a side effect, right? Because that is not handled by React. So why is calling an API a side effect? It's because when you make a fetch request or when you make an API call, right? You may get a 200 status that is successful, or the API call may be rejected. Let's say 404, resource not found, or no, or page not found, or such, or 500 server error. So when you make an API call, you are not sure of what is the output, right? Or if I want to tell it in other format, when you call an API inside React, React does not guarantee you what is the result that you are going to get from that API. React cannot guarantee you what is the output that you are going to receive while calling an API. Because React as a library just focuses on one thing, and that is to create UIs or to create views. So calling an API is not a part of, or it's not a functionality of React. So when you call an API inside React, React is telling that, okay, you know what? This is not my task. I don't know if the API that you're calling, if it is going to be successful or rejected. So whatever happens, you handle it. I'm not going to handle that. Why is updating the DOM elements manually a side effect? Isn't fetch a part of JS? Yes, it's a part of JS, but is it a part of React? No, right? React as a library just focuses on one thing, to create UIs, to create views. Why do you think updating the DOM elements manually is a side effect? Anyone? See, when I'm asking questions, I'm not expecting you to give the correct answer always. I'm just expecting to get some responses. Okay, so it does not matter if your answers are going to be correct or incorrect. Please ensure that you're responding. If you don't know, you can specify that as well, that hey, I don't know. Because React has VDOM, document object is browser API. Yes. Yeah. So when you learned about React, right? You learned that okay, React works on uh, so React works on top of something known as React Virtual DOM, right? So whenever you make any changes inside React, that changes gets first reflected inside the virtual DOM, and based on those changes inside the virtual DOM, you show or you make those changes inside the actual DOM in the browser, right? So when you try to update anything inside the browser DOM directly by bypassing the virtual DOM, React is saying that you know what, since are not using virtual DOM, anything that or any error that could occur if you're not using virtual DOM, that's on you. I am not going to take responsibility of that. Yes. So when you use the use ref hook, I'm not sure if you have used it, but when you use the use ref hook, you're basically hooking into the DOM node of the browser directly. Yes. Working with set timeout, set interval, console logs, all of those things again have the same reason. Why are they side effects? Because they are not a part of React ecosystem, right? So if I head over to MDN, you will find that there are some web APIs, right? Web APIs, not this. Um, as or let me just search for this. Yeah, so what you'll see that set timeout, right? Set interval. They are not part of React ecosystem. They are part of the web APIs, the browser APIs, right? So when you use set timeout, right? When you use set intervals, right? Also, let's say if you use console logs, right? Console.log. Yeah. So you can see console log is not a part of JavaScript itself. It's a part of this web API here. Right. So whenever you try to use any features, whenever you want to use any APIs which is not related to React, that is essentially a side effect inside React. And React tells that, okay, I'm not going to guarantee you what are the results that you're expecting. But if you want to handle the side effects, it should be done inside a use effect itself. What is virtual DOM in last unit? I did not get well. Again, we'll try to cover in depth like what is virtual DOM in the placement series if possible. But again, that would go out of the way of this or today's class itself. I may take that up after the class if you want. How console.logs works in Node? So understand it's an API, right? You can create your own versions of API. It's not limited. I've had skipped use ref. Do you think I should cover that in like 1 day or two? Yes, you can. Although we'll do cover it tomorrow, but it will be good if you could cover that as well. You're saying. So any action that is triggered by the system outside the React ecosystem is an effect and should be handled with use effect only. Right. So if someone asks you that, okay, what is the use effect? Why should we use it? So just to specify that, okay, it's a simple hook that is meant to handle side effects. So any action that is triggered by the system outside of the ecosystem is an effect, and if you want to handle that, it should be inside use effect only. That's the only thing that you should do, that you need to remember about use effect. So let's talk about what are the different ways of using use effect, or what are the different formats in which we can use effect. So can someone tell me what is this format and how many times do you think this logic will run inside this use effect? Infinity. Mhm. In mounting phase, every render, every time the component renders, every time it re-renders. Okay. Yes. So there is a misconception among students that, okay, if we use this use effect in this format, it will run infinite times. So let's understand about this a bit. So what I'll do is I'll just remove this boilerplate code. Let's create a folder named components. And let's create a simple counter application first. Counter.jsx. So let's have a local state management here. So I'll say count set count equals to use state, and let's say the count is 10 or 0 for that matter. And let's have two buttons to update this count as well. So let's have a button. Let's have only one button for now. And let's say on click equals to Let me write function out here, handle add, cost handle add equals to um, set count previous and then previous plus one. And let's show the count here as well. Okay, so this is a very basic counter. Okay, so let's use this format here that we are looking at currently. So a use effect, okay, uh, with only one argument, and that is the callback function. Right. So generally, a use effect takes two arguments. One is the callback function, and the second is the array of dependency. Right. So let's say I've not used the array of dependency, and I've written some logic out here. So let's say console.log inside the use effect. A use effect is not defined, right? So this is how you like understand errors, right? Use effect is not defined. That means it's not present. So if I look at use effect here, I can see that I'm not imported it. So I'll just import it real quick, head back to my application. So you can see if I refresh the page, I can see use effect printed twice. The reason for this is the development mode of React, which is the strict mode here. So you may remove it during the learning phase, but you can keep it while work with bigger application. So if I refresh, now you can see the console log is only getting printed once. It is not getting uh, console logged for infinite number of times. So the assumption that the logic that you write inside use effect in this format will run infinite times, that's not true. So the question is, when will this run then? So callback, this callback that is inside use effect, this is going to be triggered every time when the component renders. Okay, so the callback that you see here inside use effect, that's going to be triggered every time when the component renders. But then the question is, when does this component or what are the cases or what are the conditions during which a component renders? Can you name some, if possible? Can you tell me some of the conditions during which a component re-renders? Page refresh, okay. Apart from that, mounting phase, okay. State updates, yes. So whenever the state of that component changes, then the component re-renders. Anything else? Changes in code. I don't think that is the case. That is basically the hot reloading feature of React. So when you make any changes, it gets reflected in the UI. That's not component re-render. When the component is mounted or unmounted. Yeah. So when the component is mounted or unmounted, in that time it no comes in the UI or it goes out of the UI. I'm asking when does the component re-renders? So one answer that you gave is that whenever the state changes. So that is the one case where the component re-renders. Any other uh, conditions when a component re-renders? Set timeout if set interval is running. No. Whenever we write something new code, not exactly, that's not related to re-rendering. Components context changes. You're close. Prashant, you're close. Components context changes, yes. Going one page to another using anchor tag. In that case, it does not re-render. It's a different page altogether. So okay, so it's very simple. So the first condition is that when the state of the component changes. So let's say, what is the state inside my counter.j6? This is the count, right? This count variable. So anytime this count variable changes the values, at that time my counter component is going to re-render. What is the second? Whenever the props of that component changes. So let's say if there was some kind of props that I was receiving from the parent component of app.js, if the value of that props changes, then the component will trigger a re-render as well. So either the state changes or if the props of a component changes, these are the only two conditions when a component re-renders. Okay. So as you can see here, if I click on add, I can see the console log coming up. So what is happening here? Every time I click on add, the state is getting changed, right? Whenever I click on the add, I'm incrementing the count by 1, which is basically nothing but I'm changing the value of this count variable. So every time I'm changing the value of this count variable, I am updating the state. And I know that if I update the state, then the component is going to re-render. And this callback is going to get triggered every time the component renders. So every time I update the state, the logic that is written inside the callback, inside use effect, will get triggered. Okay, so it does not go into infinite loop. So if that was the misconception, please remove that from your head. So actually, why does it go into infinite loop? Any idea why does it go into infinite loop in this format? Patch update because of node dependency? No. Set timeout infinite. Yes, why do we use dependency? Yes, we'll come to that. There is no dependency area. No, it's not because of that. It goes into infinite loop because of this exact same reason. So let's say when you make a fetch request, right? So when you make a fetch request, you get some data, right? And when you get some data, you store it somewhere, right? So you ideally, let's say, store it inside this variable or this use state, right? So you call this set data and something, and you pass the data there, right? So whenever you set a data inside the variable, the state has changed. If the state has changed, the callback inside use effect will run again. So again, you will make a fetch request. Again, you will get the data, and again you will set. So you can see this is the infinite loop that you normally get while working with fetch API or fetch request inside use effect. Did you get that? Did you get that part? Like, why did it go into infinite loop? It's not because there is no arrow dependency. It's because whenever you make a fetch request, you get some data and you actually set that data inside the component. And by logic, this callback or anything that is written inside this callback will get executed anytime the state changes. Data is fetched only once, then why it is re-rendering again? So it is, that's the thing now. That's the thing. It is not getting fetched once. So let's say this is the counter component, okay? I come to this first line. I saw that, okay, there is a use state there where I have to store some count data, which is 0 initial. Okay, I keep it. I see there is a function here, handle add. I registered it in my memory. That's done. Then I see a use bet. I registered this and I keep it here as well. No worries. Then I come to the return statement and I return this JSX code. This UI, I execute this JSX code and I show this in the UI here. Okay. Then what? Then I come inside use effect and I fetch the API. Okay. After fetching the API, I get some data. And again, I try to store that data inside some use state. So let's say I just wrote a pseudocode here. So let's say I'm calling the second function inside the that I get from the user state, and I'm setting that data. Okay. So when I set this data, what will happen? So what will happen when I change the state of a component? It is going to re-render, right? So if it is going to re-render, what will happen? I will again come here, first line. Okay, I saw that, okay, there is a state, there is a function, there is a use effect. I'll return the JSS again, and then I will execute the use effect logic once again. So I'm not stopping here. Did you get this flow? So you need to remember that when you don't use an array of dependency, your logic will not go into infinite no infinite loop unnecessarily. It is only going to go inside infinite loop if one of this logics are going to get triggered. One, if the state of the component is changing, or else if the props of that component is changing. But we don't fetch infinite times. Yes, you don't want to fetch it infinite times, but writing code in this way where you're setting the data, right, without using any array of dependency will ensure that this component goes into an infinite loop of fetching data and setting it up, fetching data and setting it up again and again. If I haven't used anything out of environment and out of environment inside use effect like fetch or console, in that case, it will not run infinite times. No, it will not. If you have not used the fetch logic inside use effect, then it will not, right? We're only concerned about the working of use effect here. So if you have written a function outside the use effect and you're not invoking it inside use effect, then it's not going to be an issue. Once fetching is over, then rendering stops. No. So that is the problem. So you guys have understand that, okay? Once I fetch something, then the rendering stops. This is wrong. Rendering has nothing to do with fetch. Rendering only depends on these two things. Rendering only depends, or re-rendering, more so to say, re-rendering only depends on two things: the state and the props. If the state or the props are changing, then the component will re-render, and that's it. And we know if we use effect in this format, anything that is written inside this format will trigger itself if the component is re-rendering. But how second time updater function can't bring any change, because in React it only changes when it passes triple equality checks. Did not get your question properly, Tilak Singh Thakur. Second time updater function can't bring any change because in React it changes only if it passes triple equality checks. I'm not sure, but from your question, I can assume that you're talking about. So we do some kind of triple equality check on the props, not on the step. And in this format of use effect without any arrow dependency, we don't do that triple equality check from the previous render as such. Yes, that's the correct thing. Fetch changes state every time, so it re-renders every time. That is the exact thing that you need to remember. Fetch changes the state every time, so it re-renders the component again and again. Fetching stops means changing state will also stop. No, that's not the case. In fact, it's the other way around. Changing state will trigger fetching. We can use any number of use effect. It won't affect performance. I'm not sure if I've ever uh, checked the performance bottleneck of use effect, but I don't think that should be a problem ideally, because I've worked with very large code bases, and we had many use effects running at any given point of time. And I don't think that is going to no, affect performance directly as such. Again, I believe React does some internal optimizations as well. So after fetching data, the data state changes. So component re-renders. So again, use effect runs and fetch run, and it continues exactly as. I did not get how it will go inside infinite loop if we use fetch without using array dependency. Okay, so I'll just that was a very big question, Deepak. But I'll just go through it once I go through this part again. So let's understand the flow once more. So let's say I have this const data set data equals to use state. Let's send empty array. Okay. So let's say I'm fetching something. Okay. Fetch something from this URL. Then response, I do a response.json, and then I do data, I do set data. Something like this. Okay, so consider the first render, right? Consider the first render when this component is getting mounted for the first time, but is coming to the UI for the first time, right? What will happen? I'll go through this variables that, okay, there are some variables. I'll register them. I'll register this function as well. I register this use effect. I'll not execute it now, but I'll register it. And then I'll come here. I'll run this, or I'll return this JSX, and this will be shown in the UI. That's done. After I show this JSX or I return this JSX, I'll run this logic inside use effect, inside this callback function. What does it do? It fetches some data from some URL endpoint, and it sets the data inside this variable. Okay. So once I have set this data inside this variable, what do I know? What do I know about state change? That whenever the state changes, the component re-renders, right? This is clear to us. So if this component is going to re-render, then what will happen? All the steps that we did just now, that is going to occur again, right? It will again no, register this variables. It will register this function. It will register use effect. Again, it will return the JSX. And again, it is going to run the logic inside use effect. Right? And after running this logic, it is going to set the data again. So if it is setting the data again, right, what is happening? The state is changing. That means the component is going to re-render again. And if it is getting re-rendered, the whole state is going to get repeated. So this is how it goes into this infinite loop. So it's not because of fetch, or it's not because of empty array dependency. It is because whenever you make any fetch request, you try to store that data, right? And whenever you store the data, you try to change the state of a component. And when the state of that component changes, it re-renders. As simple as that. So how do we stop this? Right? How do we stop this? Fetch request to only once. I want to stop this fetch request to only once when the component is getting mounted for the first time. What do I do? Then to resolve this exact error, we say that, okay, I don't want this logic to run again and again with every re-render. I want to run this logic only once when the component renders for the first time. So that is when I use this empty array dependency. So now this logic will only run once. So I'll show this by just removing this, and let's use a simple console log. So log inside use effect here. Okay, so let's go back to our application and let's refresh. So I can see there is one console log here. Can someone tell me what will happen if I click on the add button? Yes, Deepak, I'll just go through the question once again. No, as far as this console is concerned, do you think if I click on the add button, will I get one more console logs? This is the code. Okay, so let's look at that. So if I click on the add button, you can see that my count was increased, but I did not see any console logs. I can try this once more again. If I click on add, the count is going to increase, but I don't see any console logs. And why is that the case? It's because we have passed an MTRF dependency, right? With an MTRF dependency, this callback is going to be triggered only once when the component mounts for the first time. So if the component is already present in the UI, it is not going to trigger the logic inside the use effect again and again. So the no, so the drawback that we had without using the array of dependency, that okay, every logic that we wrote here was getting affected, right? It was getting affected every time the state or the props changed. That is not happening anymore. Why? Because we have used an MDR dependency. This will tell that okay, this code, this side effect needs to run only once when the component is mounting for the first time, and that's it. That means first component renders and then use effect callback functions. Yes. So whenever a component executes, or whenever render a component, this use effect is only going to get triggered after returning the JSX. So if there is any use effect in your component, this is going to get triggered only after returning the JSX. I'll just go through the very long question of Deepak once. So when component fetches the data, then we set the data, and then set the fetch data in the set data. Because of that, data state changes again, which will fetch the data and set it. State changes when the data changes. I mean, the fetch, then why state? Yeah, so the query that you have, right? The query that you have is that if I'm getting the same data again and again, how is it setting it up in the count variable, right? Or in the data variable. So that does not. So let's say majority of the times, right? Majority of the times when we deal with API calls, we either get data in terms of, let's say, an array, right? Or inside an object. Yes or no? Right? And what are arrays or objects or functions? They are reference data types, right? So if you think that if I do triple equals to, so let's say this was the API request from the first API call, and this is the same, but in a different object, they're not going to be equal, right? So it does not matter if the contents inside this API call inside this object, if it is same or not. They are different objects, right? They're in different location. So they will get stored inside the variable. So even though the data is same, they are stored inside different locations. Are you getting this, Deepak? Use effect deals with the impure functions because use effect will run at the end of the call stack when all the code are run. Yes. So you can think of that. I would not say it deals with impure function. I would say use effect deals with effects which are not related to React. Okay, so now let's look at a modified version of this. Okay, so now I'm not using an empty arrow dependency anymore. Instead, I'm using a value inside the arrow dependency. Okay, so if I pass the count variable as an arrow dependency now, what do you think will happen if I click on the add button? So I can see that there is a console log initially when I refresh the page. That's okay. But what will happen if I click on the add button? Will I see the console log again? Okay. Okay. Yes. So if I click on the add button, you can see that I get the console log that is present inside use effect. So what does this format signify? Well, this format tells us that the logic inside use effect will run for the first time when the component is mounting, and every time the value inside this arrow dependency changes. Okay, so I'll just repeat it again. It will run for the first time. This logic, whatever you have written inside use effect, this will run for the first time when the component is getting mounted in the UI, right? When it is being shown in the UI for the first time, and every time the value inside this arrow dependency changes. So here, if I'm clicking on the add button, the value of this count variable, right, that is changing, right? And if that is changing, then this logic that I have written inside this callback function, that is also going to execute. We can use this for pagination and pass page inside dependency arrays. Again, like the uh, use cases are limitless. What I'm trying to no, focus on is the behavior of these different formats. That okay, if the format is like this, what is the behavior? If the format is like this, what is the behavior? Can you please discuss about the distortion, the end part of mount state? Which part are you talking about, Sumit? I'm not sure. Whenever changes count, that time get called, and yes. Okay, so let's modify this no, use effect a bit. Let's say one, say two. Can someone tell me what will I get in the console log if I try to no, refresh the page? Both one and two, right? So if I go here, if I refresh the page, I get use effect one and two. Well and good. If I click on the add button, then what will I get? Right. Only two will get called, right? Because only two is, or only the second use effect has this count as a dependency. So I'll get inside. If I remove this and if I click on the add button, I'll get inside use effect two. Right. So if I have count in the first use effect as well, then, and if I click on the add button, will I get two first or will I get one first? Both will print, okay. But let's say which one will I get? One or two? One first and then two. Right. So this is what I need to, I wanted to explain that whenever you are using hooks, right, inside React, they are always going to execute themselves in the order in which you have defined them. So this is the first hook that I've used in my application, right? In my component. So this use state is always going to get executed before this use effects, or if there are any other hooks. Similarly, if I'm using this two use effects here, this use effect is always going to get executed before running this use effect. So the order is important while you are working with hooks. So it is always going to be use effect one and then use effect two. If I take this and if I bring this before this use effect one, then I'll get two and one. Okay. I'm missing out some questions during the in the chat box. If possible, can you ask the question in the Q&A tab? That way, I'll have a log of okay, what are the questions? Can you discuss about the unmounting start and how we can? Yes, we will cover that unmounting here as well. There was, and if we don't use any array dependency and we are using more than one use state, then whenever any of the use state data will change, use effect will also run. Yes, exactly correct. So if you're not using any array of dependency, and if you're using more than one user state, then whenever the data of any one of the user state changes, then both the use effect will run. Again, these are some of the things, right? You can actually try things out. Right? Okay, let's have two counters. I'm incrementing the count of the first counter. What will happen? When we change the state of data, first time it will allow the changes, but when second time this is with the same memory location. So that is what I'm trying to say. So when you do set data empty array for the first time, and when you do this the same thing, set data empty array for the second time, they both don't have the same memory location. That is where I want to talk about, right? This array and this array are not the same. Right? Do I have to go here? Yes. So if I say const array 1 equals to 1, 2, 3, and if I do const array 2 equals to 1, 2, 3, and if I do console.log array 1 triple equals to array 2, they are not same. It's going to be false, even though the data is same. So if I'm getting this from the first API request and I'm getting the same data in the second API request as well, they are not going to be true. Wise, again, because they are reference data types. That is how JavaScript is created. Right? When we say that, okay, it's a loosely typed language, this is like one part of it. Okay, so let's look at the third format of using use effect. Where is it? Yes. So with the fourth way of using a user is with a cleanup function. Now, what exactly is a cleanup function here? Well, this part here. So this return callback function that you see here, that is what a cleanup function is inside user. So how do we use it? Like when should we use it? What is a cleanup function? When will it run? So for cleanup function, you need to remember two things. The cleanup function will run one when the component unmounts, that is during the unmounting phase, and second, when the value inside the array of dependency changes. So these are the two conditions when the logic inside the cleanup function will run. We'll look into both of them. So we'll start with this part, when the component unmounts. So for this, what I'll do is I'll make a small change here. So let's go back to amp.js and let's create a toggle functionality here. Okay. Let's say const show counter set show counter use state Let's have true by default, and let's have a button here. Toggle counter, and let's have on click handle toggle. Set show counter, whatever the previous value was, just negative. Okay, and here I'll say if show counter is true, then only show the counter component. So by default, I should be seeing this counter component here, but if I click on toggle counter, I should not see this. So let's take an example of side effect that will make much more sense here. So I'll just remove this use effect here. And instead of using console log and count, what I'll do is I'll try to use uh, an, a different side effect. Let's say I'm using set interval here. Okay. And inside the set interval, let's say I'm using this console log inside set interval, and let's say 1000. Okay, so what is happening currently? You can see that the console log, right, or this logic, right, or this set interval is getting executed for the first time. Since I've used an MPRF dependency, this is going to run only once. And what is it doing? Well, it's running an interval with a delay of 1 second, and every second it's trying to console log this piece of text. Now, the thing is, if I try to remove this counter component from the UI, right? So if you go back to the DOM node, you'll actually see that the code for this counter component is present in the UI, right? But let's say if I want to unmount, right? If I want to remove this code for counter from the UI, then what should happen? So if I click on the toggle counter, the code for the counter goes away. It's not present in the DOM anymore. But if I check the console log, I can see that the set interval is still running. So I am running some code, or I'm running some piece of logic which is not actually present in the DOM tree itself. Don't you think this is a bug? I'm trying to execute a piece of code which is not even present in the DOM structure, in the DOM tree. Yes, so this is what is memory leakage. You're trying to execute something which is not even present there. So it's running in the background, which you don't know. So this is a problem. This is a problem statement. So we know that we can actually use something known as a cleanup function. And this cleanup function will run when the component unmounts. So when a component unmounts, that when I remove a component from the UI, I can actually execute any piece of logic that I've written inside this cleanup function. So let's try using that. So now what I'll do is I'll say return, use a cleanup function. Okay. And here I'll say clear interval. Okay. What does clear interval needs? An ID. Okay. Where do I get this ID from? From set interval. Okay. So let ID equals to this. But what is ID? Like, is it a function? Is it an object? Is it an array? What is the data type? Function? No. String? No. No, it's not an object. What is the return value of set interval? Return interval ID is a numeric non-zero value, right? So it is always going to be number and a non-zero one as well. So like these are small things that you may get asked during your interviews and everything. So please ensure that you focus on these small parts as well. So it is going to be a number and it's going to be a non-zero number as well. So now I've made these changes. I've written this cleanup function, and I'll just refresh my page to see the changes now. So by default, the set interval is running. I can see the console logs here. But the moment I click on this toggle counter, the console log is not printing anymore. If I toggle this back on, then the logic starts executing again. But if I click on toggle counter to remove this, then the console log is not coming anymore. So this is what cleanup function is doing. I can add a console log here to show this even properly. Clearing the interval. Let's have one more console log here, and here I can say starting the interval. So let's click on refresh. You can see starting the interval, and then the console logs are coming up. If I click on toggle counter, then clearing the interval gets formed up, or gets printed. So whatever I write inside this cleanup function will get executed the moment I try to remove or I try to unmount this counter component from the UI. Can you please give some real life example while dealing with the API and other PWP? Yes, I'll try to provide you some links on that. But is this part clear? Or the first part of this, that when will the cleanup function run? When the component unmounts. So this is just the one case. We'll look at the second case scenario as well. But the first case scenario, like, is this clear? Like when the component unmounts. But if it is not set timeout, then how to recognize some memory leakage happening? So ideally, when memory leakage happens when you are dealing with side effects, that thing is clear, right? Because in React, you are not actually writing anything apart from UI, right? Anything that you're writing apart from UI is generally a side effect. So the chances of memory leakage is going to be very crucial, or it's going to be, or the probability of happening memory leakage is going to be very much on this use effect itself, where we are handling this side effects. So whenever you handle or when you write side effects, it's better to also write the cleanup logic for that side effect as well. We'll come to more examples on that. But whenever you write a side effects, you should also write the cleanup function for that side effect as well. And there is something known as heap memory as well that you can actually check in your browser. That will actually tell you that, okay, how much memory your application is taking. So you can actually do some, you can take heap snapshot as at intervals, and you can check if the heap memory is getting in, if it is increasing or not, right? So that can actually tell you that, okay, is there any kind of memory leakage happening or not from my code? Explain handle add function once. This part. I think this should be clear from RCT 101 and this. Set interval is part of use effect, but it is executed every time, even though there is an MTR dependency. Why is it so? So it is not executed every time. So this code, right? This code is only getting executed once. It's not executing every time. You can actually see the console log as well. If I refresh the page, you can see this starting the interval console log. It is only getting printed only once. It is not getting printed twice, thrice, or repeatedly, right? Only the logic inside the set interval is getting printed again and again because it's a set interval. The logic that you write inside set interval gets executed after the time delay that you have specified here. Okay, so I expect that this part was clear to everyone that when the component unmounts, this logic or this cleanup function will trigger, right? Yes, no. Okay. Again, like I've used an arrow function here. You can use a normal function as well if you want. Any use case of this? Yes, I'll come to it. Let's remove this. Okay, let's remove this and let's just focus on console log itself. Different between arrow function and normal function. Both are very similar, but one of the main differences that we'll see in arrow function and normal function is that in arrow function you don't have that access of this keyword itself, right? So the context of this goes away when you try to use arrow functions. Yes, so that's the primary reason when you start working with arrow functions, but also it's like less code, right? Just simple parentheses and arrow to start with. Okay, so let's look at the second part here. So when the value inside the arrow dependency changes, that's when the cleanup function will run. Okay, so now you might have noticed that we have used an empty arrow dependency, but the second condition states that this will run when there is some kind of value inside this arrow dependency as well. So what I'll do is I'll do this. I'll add count here. Okay, and let's do let's use simple numbers. Let's say 1, let's say 2. Let's use some more console logs as well. Let's do 1, let's do 2, let's do 3, let's do 4 here. If I refresh the page or if I go to the page for the first time, what will be the sequence of these console logs? Take your time, but you are correct. Gagan, Ganesh, you're also correct. I don't see many correct answers. Sumat, you are also correct. No, just for the first time when I refresh the page. Okay, when this counter component is going to be mounted for the very first time. Okay, let's look at this then. I'm refreshing the page. I get 1, 4, and 2. I could just bring this up together. Okay, so what are you getting? You're getting 1 expected, right? This is expected. Then we said that the logic inside use effect does not run until and unless it has returned the JSX, right? So it registers, React registered that, okay, there is a use effect, but it does not renders that or it does not execute this logic. Instead, it comes to this part, console log 4, it prints that, and then it returns the JSX. After returning the JSX, it goes back to the use effect. And inside use effect, what does it do? It runs this side effect. That's it. Okay, so it's not one. So I see many of you have written 1, 4, 2, and 3. It's not that case. It in the mounting phase, yes. That was the question. That was my question. That what will be the sequence of this console log in the mounting phase, not the updation phase. Updation phase is going to come when I click on the add button. I have not talked about the add button right now. I just said I refresh the page. What will I get? This 1, 4, and then the side effect. That's it. Now, tell me what will happen if I click on the add button. What will be the sequence of these console logs? I will click on the add button. Then what will be the sequence of this console logs? Okay, so let's check this out. If I click on the add button, I get 1, 4, 3, and 2. Okay, but why did 3 get executed first, right? Ideally, 2 should have got executed, right? Why is this happening? So let's talk about this. Why are we getting? So if I refresh the page, initially I got 1, 4, 2. Okay. But the moment I click on the add button, I get 1, 4, 3, and 2. 1, 4, 3, and then 2. Now, why is this happening? Well, we said that the value, whenever the value inside the array of dependency changes, then the callback or the cleanup function will run, right? So when we clicked on the add button, right? When we clicked on this add button, then console log 1 and 4, they were executed perfectly well and fine. But then I see that console log 3 is getting printed first. And that is because React tells that whenever you are trying to, you are trying to trigger a new side effect, you need to clean up the previous side effect. Okay, so just take this example for matter. So let's say there is a family gathering or a function in your home, right? How many times do you clean up the room at max, or at minimum, let's say? So let's say there is a birthday party in your home, and you are expecting some guests to come up in your home. So how many times do you expect at the minimum to clean up your room where you are going to host them? Ideally 2 times, right? So you are going to clean that room before the guests are going to come, right? So you set everything in place, right? So that when they come, they have everything at the proper place, right? So before the party is starting or the function is starting, you clean everything up. And then when the party is over, then you clean everything up as well, right? So these are the 2 places where you clean up. In a similar way, React is telling that, okay, there is a side effect that you are going to execute, but before executing this side effect, let's clean up the side effect of the previous render. Okay, if there is any side effect that is still present in the background, let's clean up that so that I can create a new side effect. So if you just look at the sequence, you will find this. So in the first render, right, this was the first render, right? This 1, 4, and 2, the first render, and this was the console log of the second render. So in the first render, you can see that I printed 1, 4, and 2. 2 is a side effect here, right? So 2 is a side effect in the first render. In the second render, I executed 1 and 4 again, And then what did I do? I cleaned up the two from the previous render. So if I have to just specify here side effect. Okay, if I click on add, what do you see? 1 and 4. And here, first I'm cleaning the side effect from the previous render, and then I'm reinitializing or reinvoking the side effect. So these two conditions that you see here are basically one in the mounting phase or the unmounting phase, right? And this is the updation phase, right? So if you remember the life cycle of a component, right? It is mounting, updation, and then unmounting. So cleanup function runs in two of these phases. The first phase is where it is most primarily used, is the unmounting phase, and the second in the updation phase as well. So in the updation phase, if there is any value present, if there is any side effect present, then it will clear the side effect of the previous render first, and then it will create your own side effect, as we saw here. Right? First, it cleaned up the side effect of the previous render, and then it created a new side effect. Okay, I'll give a break, but is there anything that you want? If you have understood this, then we can go ahead with the break. If not, yes, this PPT will be provided to you in the lecture notes. So. Anyone else? Can you please answer what is unmount? So when we talk about unmount, so let's say when I talk about unmount counter component, then I mean that unmount the component or the code related to counter component from the DOM tree. When I say mount counter component, then I mean all the logic or the code that is related to counter component should be added to the DOM tree or the DOM node. And unmount is just the reverse of it, that I want to remove all the code, the JSX, HTML related to the counter component from the DOM string. That is unmount. Okay, so maybe take a break of, let's say, timer, how much it is now. Maybe take a break of, let's say, 12 minutes. Meanwhile, if someone wants to try this, what they can do, they can use one more use effect, okay, and then try guessing that, okay, what could be the sequence of this console logs if I have in the mounting, in the unmounting phase and in the updation phase. Okay, so did you try running this piece of code here? What was the sequence? One, two, three, four, five, six. Yeah, so let's look at the mounting or the, like in the mounting phase. What is it? It's 1, 6, 2, and 4 as expected. 1 comes first, then 6, and then the logic inside this use effect runs expected. What happens when I try to update this? So if I try to update this state inside this component, then 1 and 6 comes first again, totally expected. And then what do? I first clean up the side effects that was created in the previous render. So how do I do that? By running the cleanup function. So you can see 3 is getting printed first, then 5, and then the new side effects 2 and 4 are getting rendered in the console. Which part of this do you need explanation on. The mount phase, it's 1, 6, 2, and 4. Because we said, right, the cleanup function does not run on the mounting phase. It runs only in two phases, the unmounting and updation phase. Right, so that is the reason you don't see the console log of the side effects during the mounting phase. But you will see this when it is either unmounting here, or if it is updating. Updation means every new re-render, yes. So you can actually go to Reactor. You can go to the official documentation of React, and you can actually search for use effect here. And they have actually given a very good explanation of the same thing that we have learned today as well. So like use effect does not return anything, it returns undefined. What are the parameters, right? The setup or the callback function, the dependencies, which is optional, right? What are the caveats when you should like what are the places where you need to take care of? What are the different uses, right? So one of the frequent questions like when should we use effects, right? So there are many examples given here. So if you just look at the usages, there are many. So most common uses that you will work at this model is with APIs, right? So a basic example could be, let's say you are building an e-commerce website, okay? And your logic is that when the user goes to the products page, I should fetch all the products from my database, and I should show that in the products page. So what did you do? You created a products page, okay? And inside the use effect, you kept an empty array of dependency, and you made that fetch request or the Axios request, whatever it is. But let's say before the API request was completed, even before you got the response back, the user went to a different page altogether. So in that case, do you want the response in that page? Do you want the products data in the home page, or let's say in the about page? No, you don't, right? So in that scenario, what do you want to do? You want to cancel the API request if the user has moved from the products page to a different page, right? So how do you do it? How do you handle that? Well, you can handle it in the cleanup function. That okay? If the user unmounts from the product page, that cancel the API request. Or let's talk about this. Let's say there are three people, right? Person A, B, and C. So if person A and B are chatting, right? I want to get all the messages from person A, right, in my window. But let's say if I start chatting with person C, then I don't want the message of person E coming into this window when I'm expecting to no, interact with person C, right? So in that case, you can subscribe, right? You can subscribe to a particular user, let's say person A and person B. And when you go to a different window to talk with a different person, you unsubscribe from that current user, and then you subscribe to a new user. How can you cancel request that has been made? Again, you get some ways to do that in Axios. Officially, React developers say that don't use Create React. Yes, we'll also move away from Create React. We'll try to use Byte from the upcoming models. But again, it will start from 101 and then moving on. So please go through this documentation for today, and also go through this link. So this will actually tell you all about like what effects are, right? What and how is it different with events that you have learned in the DOM manipulation classes. So these two articles, I'll share the link with them in the lecture notes, but do go through them. Okay, so they're actually also the same thing, right? You need to pass two arguments to use effect. The setup function, that is this blue colored code here, the side effect, right? Then there is this cleanup code, And then there is this list of dependency. So React calls your setup and cleanup function whenever it is necessary, which may happen multiple times. Your setup code runs when the component is added to the page during the mounting phase. After every re-render, the keyword is re-render, your dependencies, where the dependency has changed, the cleanup code runs first and then the setup code, right? So the example we said that if the dependency change, then the cleanup code will run first and then the setup code, right? This is what they are saying here as well. So if any of your dependencies change, then the cleanup code will run first and then this one, right? And your cleanup code runs one final time after your component is unmounted. So again, just go through these articles, go through all the different examples. You'll get a very good idea of what use effect is and what are the different places where you should actually use use effect. Why cleanup console first? What is the reason behind this? Um, the reason is that if there is any side effect which is left behind in the background for some reason, it should be removed before creating a new side effect. So let's say React misses out on clearing a set interval, right? So you don't want to create a new interval when the previous interval is still running on. So you want to clean the previous interval, then create a new interval, right? Otherwise, you will have two intervals running in the background simultaneously, which is something that you don't want. Okay, so let's quickly look at um, React router DOM as well. So it's very simple. I believe you might have also used this, but you use two use effect and the cleanup function of both ran together. They don't run together; they run sequentially, right? The first, uh, if it's this, yeah. So if I just no unmount this, then you can see 3 ran first and then 5. When you update, okay. So if I update, then the 3 ran first and then the cleanup function of the second use effect ran. Okay, I'll take up some questions after the class if there are any still left. Okay, so let me just quickly complete this React router DOM as well. So for that, I'll just quickly install the package React router DOM. Again, why do we need to install React router DOM? Can someone tell me? For routing, okay. Yes. So the problem statement is that React is a single page application, right? Uh, what do I mean by single page application? It means that everything that you see here, right? Every piece of code that you see in your React application, it is all rendered inside this single div with this ID root. So if everything is getting rendered inside a single div, how do you create different pages? Because just think back on your DOM manipulation classes, right? If you had to create a website with 5 pages, you created 5 different HTML, right? Index.html, about.html, contact.html, products.html, right? This is how you created things. But now if everything is getting rendered inside a single HTML page, how do you create that multi-page user experience, right? So that is where routing comes in. And React Router DOM does exactly that. What it does, it actually changes the page or the component that you want to render based on different paths. So what we do is we just no, install React Router DOM. Why? Because React being a UI library, it does not focuses on the routing aspect of an application. It only focuses on the UI side of things. So React Router DOM will actually help me on that. How do I get started? Well, the first thing that I need to do is I need to wrap my whole application around a higher order component, which is browser router in this case. Why is this necessary? Well, if we don't use browser router, then React Router DOM will not have the idea of that, okay, what is the current path? What is the new path that the user wants to go into and so on. So if you ever try to understand like these tree structure here in browser router, you can actually see there is something known as navigation.provider, location.provider. And if you remember, this nomenclature is very similar to context API, right? In context API as well, we have something, we have a provider, we have a consumer, right? So it so context API came after uh, React Router DOM, I believe. So the same logic or the same application or the behavior, I would say, is very similar. So once we wrap our whole application around this browser router, what do I need? Well, I need to actually specify what are the different routes that I want in my application, right? So I can create, let's say, a pages directory, and inside this, I can say main routes.jsx. And here I can specify that what are the routes that I want. So I'll again take a higher order component routes from React Router DOM, and inside this, I'll specify what are the single route that I want to no, create in my application. So I'll say a route to, I think it was 4, right? Yeah. Parts equals to element equals to, let's say, I'll not create a separate, I'll just use devs here. So let's say this is home page, or let's use h1 tag just to be clear. Okay. And did I import route? No, I did not. Let's do that as well. And all I need to do is I need to import this main routes inside my app component. So I'll just comment this out, and I'll say main routes. So you can see that the default path, that is the slash operator here, renders the home page. If I want to create another route, well, I can just copy this piece out. I can say slash counter, and here the element would be, let's say, the counter. Okay, so if I go to slash counter, I get the counter component. If I try to, I should ideally also specify that what should happen or what page should be rendered if none of these paths matches. So for that, I can use a star here, and I can say element equals to let's say h1 page not on. So let's say if I try to go to a path which is not present, then I get this element page not found. Because what is this doing? Well, it is basically telling that, okay, so whenever you try to go to any route, right, React Router DOM actually matches all the paths. So this tells that, okay, if none of the above paths have matched, if none of the other paths have matched, then render this element for everything else. Can someone tell me what is a higher order component? I've used that word too many times. Higher order component. Acha, tell me what is the higher order function? Okay. Map function. Yes, which takes callback as an argument. So you may get asked that, okay, why is map map is there filter reduce? So you may get asked that, okay, why is map filter reduce is a higher, why is that a higher order function? So you may say that, okay, these are higher order functions because they take another function as their argument and may or may not return a function, but they take another function as an argument. That's why map is a higher order function. What is this? This is a callback function. No, callback function are not higher order function. So higher order function take callback function as arguments. What is meant by callback function? So the function which is passed as arguments to another functions, which may get executed inside that function sometime, is known as a callback function, right? So in similar manner, what is a higher order component? A component which takes another component as its no, I would not say argument here because it's not a function, but you can think of it in those terms. But I will say a component which takes another component as a child is a higher order component. So here in index.js, browser router is a higher order component. Why? Because it takes app component, which is a component, as a child component here. In a similar manner, in main routes, this routes is a higher order component. Why? Because it takes this route, the single route, as a child. You might have also learned this where, let's say, you want to create a protected route, right? So, or a private route. So you can do something like this: require auth 6. And here, all you want to basically do is you want to check if the user is authenticated. If yes, return the. So I'll say if no, then redirect or navigate to login page. Else, show the child counter. So now let's say if I want to make this counter component as the no protected route, what I will do is I'll say no require auth, and I'll wrap it around this counter component. So just to get an idea, how do I get this counter? If I just do children here inside the prop object, to console.log children, let's return children as well. And let's go to counter. You can actually see that this returns a React element. So children is nothing but a React element. And you can see the name is counter. Okay, so if I want to have any no conditional checks, I can easily do that. I can say if the user is not authenticated, then navigate or redirect to the let's say login page, which is for the /login. Again, so there are like multiple hooks that we have or we get from React Router now, and we'll look into that in the upcoming classes as well. So like this navigate hook is something that we get from this itself, which is this function is something that we get from this use navigate hook, which allows us to actually no go from one path to another path programmatically. So if I do this is yeah, I did not shut down this. So I don't think there's any route here. So let's do this. Okay. Can we say HOC can be used to wrap a component and provide additional functionality? Yes. So what you see here is a design pattern in React itself. I'm not sure if they're composition, or let's say encapsulation. I'm not sure if they have included in the new docs or not, but it was present in the legacy React Dev. Yeah. So you can actually go through this documentation of like a composition design pattern, which basically said that no, you can actually uh, divide the components into smaller parts and actually use the hierarchy or this format to reuse multiple uh, components together. Like this is primarily used in and creating different layouts. So you can see that this is a split pane. Left hand side we can have context, and the right hand side we can have chat, and so on. Great. Anything else that is left in routing? Do you have to work with class components anytime in near future? Not exactly. You will be given a we'll take a class around class components during our placements or during your final module, just to understand that okay, what are class components, how do they work, but uh, not in this model. Okay, so that was all that we needed to cover. What we covered today is basically what are the different ways of using, or what are the different formats of using use effect. Right, we talked about the different use cases in all of these lifecycle methods. Talked about updation phase. We talked about mounting, unmounting, and basically at the end we also looked at how to get started with React Router DOM. Why is it needed as such? Uh, yeah, just a quick question. Have you used this link tag from React Router DOM? Okay, so why are we not using the anchor tags instead of link tags? Like you can, yes, link tag is same as the anchor tag, right? So why are we not using the anchor tag? Anchor tag refreshes the page. Okay, so what is the problem if the page gets refreshed? Anchor tag is not a React. Yes, it's not a React element, but what is stopping you from using anchor tags instead of link tags from React Router DOM? App becomes slow. Link works on React, but in backend it's anchor. वो sign out कर देगा जो भी. Nope. Yeah, so very simple thing. Just look at this behavior, right? My count is 7. If I refresh, the count is becoming 0. Why is it becoming 0? Because that is the initial state. So whenever the React application refreshes, right, everything reinitializes back to the initial state that we had. Okay. So let's say if I clicked on the counter, this is my current state. If I refresh the page, I lose all that data. I lose all the state. So every time I refresh the page, I get reinitialized. I reinitialize my entire application to the initial state. So I lose out on data. That's the reason we don't use anchor tags, because the default behavior of anchor tags is to reload the page. And if I reload the page in my React application, I'll lose on data. So link tags, they also use anchor tags internally as well, but they use that prevent default behavior, right? Just like we use the form elements, right? And we do e.prevent default to stop the default behavior. Similarly, with link tag as well, they also use anchor tags internally as well inside React.program library, but they use that um, e.prevent default to stop this behavior. Can we use the local storage with user state? Yes, you can. There's no harm in that. We'll come to state management tomorrow. No use of class components anymore. Yes, there is no use of class components, but understanding how class components used to work, how they work, is going to be important, because in most of the companies, there is a chance that you may find some legacy code which is written in class components. So although you are going to write code in function components, but if time permits, right, or let's say someday your company asks you that, okay, work on this legacy code which is written in class component, you should actually know how is things working around there. Okay, I'll stop the recording. I'll take up any other questions if you have.